Okay, so here we keep going, a little bit quieter because it is already late at night. Mechanisms of the internal attitude towards what happens. So the pain is running away from, the avoidance is pretending it to be avoided, running towards something else, trying to do away with, trying to get rid of. Focus on the thing that you want to get rid of, augmenting and changing what is there or lessening. Or pleasure, running towards something, trying to bring something about, augmenting and changing what is there, amplifying, trying to transmute. Resistance, through giving it a different meaning and clinging on to what is there, wanting it to prolong. Video number 6. So we start out developing an egoic entity when growing up. This is important for each human to take his or her place in society. Mostly then we forget that first of all we are a part of nature, and that our mental capacity is a special property of our evolved brains that comes out of nature as well. There is a time in a child's development where the mental functions of anticipating the future and analyzing the past set in. There is also a time where the previously unconditioned experienced love is experienced as conditional, meaning only certain behaviors are accepted by the parents. The reason that only when we are a certain way we are accepted, so only a certain part of us is acceptable. We do not have at this point the reasoning capacities to see that hang on one second. So we do not have reasoning capacities at this point. So what happens is that we grow up and we were unconditionally loved. Our parents liked us the way that we are, and we felt that we were liked the way that we truly were. And then came the point where our parents sensed that now the mental capacities of the child have progressed to the way where it was now a fit time to teach the child the rules of society. And so they realized that this was now going to be good for the child. And so then came the point So, okay, now we're back here in the content. Exactly. So there is a time in the child's development when the mental functioning of anticipating the future and analyzing the past sets in. There is also a time where the previously unconditioned experienced love is experienced as conditional, meaning only certain behaviors are accepted to the parents. We reason that only when we are a certain way, then we are accepted. So only a certain part of us is acceptable. We do not have at this point the reasoning capacities to see that what parents permit and not is partly due to their internal markup, and B, we don't see the situational context in which our behavior is unacceptable. We reason that this behavior in general is unacceptable. So we reject that part of us as a trait, not only as situationally inappropriate. When those two overlap in the development, the egoic entity starts to build itself in the human psyche. The entity is a mind-made entity, comprising of mental reasoning with strong emotional connotation, meaning what is mentally reasoned is related to the access to parental affection, which is equal to the survival of the child. So to keep the mind-made entity alive is to ensure that the entire system stays alive. The egoic entity is complex, so to keep an individual in its manifestations, but it has general working principles and archetypes. So the child reasons first how I should be in order to increase the chance of my parents showing me affection. Second, how I must not be in order to decrease the chance of parents withdrawing affection. The first is going towards something that motivates us, like attention or money. The second is avoiding something that we fear, like offending somebody. So from these early childhood association patterns of what is desirable, increasing the chance of affection, and what needs to be avoided, decreasing the chance of withdrawal of affection, the psychological blueprint is formed that runs the adult. Even if we get aware of that, we still as adults follow that blueprint. Even if it doesn't run us unconsciously, we remain influenced by that. As we progress on our life's path and accumulate life experience, new association pathways are formed that expand the original blueprint into more complexity. So somebody might get upset in the argument with another person because she feels this conversation is a waste of time, because she links the avoidance of this interaction with free time, which in turn is linked to practicing a favorite instrument, which was linked in the past childhood experiences as increasing the likelihood of praise and parental affection, which is a love substitute for the child. We all have certain love substitutes. What we really want is the love, but in the way that we receive it, oftentimes there are certain things that come before that we feel are necessary for us to do that and to get that, first of all. Even if we get aware of that, we still as adults follow that blueprint. Even if it doesn't run us consciously, we remain influenced by that. So as we progress on our life's path, so somebody might get upset in an argument of another person. Exactly, this is one example of avoidance behavior due to mental association patterns based on the early child blueprint. Video 7. If the parents are seeking behaviors from the child to fill their own emotional void, the more they selectively love certain behaviors, they love the child conditionally, not unconditionally. This exclusively for certain parts of the child encourages the formation of the egoic entity. If the parents are seeking from the child behaviors that they were seeking from their parents, they take the child's behavior personal, so in turn make the behavior personal to the child. The more the child feels personally wrong, instead of the situationally displayed behavior being wrong, the more the urge to be different is ingrained in the psyche. So the more the urge to be different is ingrained in the psyche, the more the urge to make life circumstances different than they are emerges. Due to little to non-existent education on life and happiness, many people carry the notion that happiness comes from the things that happen, that I don't have, that others do or don't do to me. So most parents love the child very conditionally, nurturing the child's anxiety to be different. This in turn breeds a psychic marker that resists alignment with life. Alignment with life means acknowledging that what is okay the way that it is. This means also to acknowledge that you are okay the way that you are. Those go both ways. Aligning with life helps being okay the way that you are and vice versa. The deep-seated fear of not being okay the way that you are breeds, number one, the need to add on to the egoic entity. Most people with a strong degree of an egoic entity experience, number one, a general underlying feeling of unease and stress and lack. So in the same way, as the child tries to think of ways to please the parent to fill that void, the adult tries to think of ways to fill that void. This leads to fearful chasing of materials such as money, sexual partners, travel experiences, seminars, opportunities. This leads to the mass consumerism and waste that we see in today's world. Video 8. Resisting nature. Because you don't like your own nature, the way that you are split off from your nature. You instead live in the mental realm of how things should be instead. How you relate to you internal, so you relate to the external. So not being able and willing to feel your own nature within, we're unable to feel the nature on the outside. In that way we can consume meat without empathy, or watch natural destruction without strong reaction. When we are split off from our internal nature of how we are and instead chase the anticipation of the ease and a job promotion, we are also split off from nature and empathy with it, and instead building a power plant out of the anticipation of the emotion of progress. So when we try to heal the current nature destruction, catastrophes, wars and inequalities, the core wound is the individual needs to be addressed. The urge that things should be different than they are, the way that they are because they need to be different in order to be different than I am. So out of these capacities for mental abstraction, the following archetypical behaviors emerge. Wanting to sustain what has run its natural course, like an emotion. Wanting to bring about something that is not. Wanting to do away with something what is. That has the following implications. We are rarely present, meaning we are rarely at ease with the situation. We rarely experience life out of an unconditioned state, but out of the viewpoint of our egoic entity, meaning to heal this egoic way of living, we need to understand that what we anticipate or fear is always an emotion. It is never the thing or the person, etc. It is always the way that we anticipate to feel. Realizing that we are life and nature on a very physical level. When we grow up, we accumulate conditioning in order to fit into society. We develop an external reference of whether our behavior is acceptable in service to the survival of the entirety of society. Then after a time comes of shedding away conditioning in order to live in alignment with life. We have ingrained the external reference intuitively and integrate an internal reference. In that way we make sure that we bridge our personal fulfillment with survival of the society. This deconditioning happens by itself, as long as we don't interfere with it. Life hands us certain partners of the opposite sex that match us in a way to bring up certain parts of our conditioning. In knowing the value of that, we can let the healing happen. So oftentimes here's the thing that happens. We tend to attract partners, and they're attractive to us because they have something that we don't. So we feel a sense of completion. And oftentimes these parts that they express is the very opposite of what we repress. So it means we were rewarded for the opposite of that, meaning that we made these parts of ourselves wrong, or rather, this expression of ourselves. It can be called a part, but it's really an expression on a scale, right? Of are you more introverted, or are you more the life of your party? And you want to find your way on this scale of this way of being, right? This character quality of yours. And so then we oftentimes attract partners who have the very opposite of the qualities that we judge within ourselves in an attempt to bring ourselves back to wholeness. So in the same way as we are attracted within ourselves towards the things that are inside of us that we want to see, in the same way, the other person is being brought in our life so that we get to see these parts within ourselves. And so when I'm talking to my client, I'm going to say what we need to be doing with that. Continuously sharing about that. I think that's great. To continuously talk about it. Because I think what would need to happen is that you need to continuously talk through it and explore this from different angle. You know, to just tell the whole story the way it was. Another part could be talking about potentially the changes that your wife is feeling right now and what you're feeling as a result of that. Then, do you have other children? That. So you don't really need to do anything different apart from finding a way to let the emotions happen. And so this can also be a great way for your team to rise. If they say, okay, he is actually, now we're there for them. Because people want to be there for somebody else. And if you give them the opportunity, I also sometimes have that with my partner here, where situations manifested where we both were weak in a way, and the other person stepped in. I had weak moments when he stepped in, and he had weak moments when I really stepped in. And it was great for us to go, and so we went a little bit back and forth, and so it can be a great way to communicate with your team also like that. And so I don't think not much more needs to happen, but to continuously talk about it. Not to, of course, you want to move past it, but you really want to get to a point of yourself of acceptance, and you want to talk through everything that stands in the way of it. Not because there was a reason for that. Who knows what the reason was? You say you don't think that's true, then this belief doesn't serve you. Do you think that's true? I don't think that's true. But I do think that there are lessons in there for you right now to learn. Now that it happened, you gotta take some lessons from it. Lessons, for example, that every day is precious. To really celebrate life and children. That it is a great part of life to be a child. So life hands us certain situations that confront us with the major life challenges. Life hands us daily triggers that will lead to the natural healing and resolution process as long as they are not interfered with. Oh, that works. Videos uploading. That's great. That's beautiful. Thank you so much. Video 9. So we start building our egoic entity or self-concept of what is to what degree to which person acceptable and unacceptable. So we look for ourselves, for a definition of ourselves in the other. As long as we have not found the internal reference of heart and intuition guiding us through life, we will look for ourselves in the other, so we feel our attention drawn in the direction of looking for confirmation or approval. Is it okay, is it not okay, etc. Animals experience themselves as separate, yet they remain individual, in the sense that they know their undivided nature beyond that. Identity means that we feel identical with. Our unchanging identity is the nature that we are. A volatile identity can be cast away. It is that of our egoic entity. When we feel identical with that, we identify, we create suffering. Human nature, faculties, conceptualization, memory and prediction, ego versus false ego. The real self comes up before the conditioning. And choices, and will. The included is not the inclusive. It does have the same parts and structures. The leaf is the tree, but it is consequent to what is referent. The leaf is the tree, not to try to be the inclusive in form as being all one, but being one in essence as the expression of the one. What is referent to both of them? What are both consequent to is the relation. They depend on each other. Doesn't mean that one is inferior, as both are consequent to the relationship. That would be then just potential. So that's why they need us for the manifestation of it. The inner and the outer. Video 10. In trying to affect, live and oppose ourselves on life, life is going to suffer, but your life is going to suffer. Resistance does not affect the tree, but the leaf is affected if the tree tries to wander by itself. People are created in God's image, but not to mix up the form with the essence and infer the totality and inclusivity of the included of the form. We are not here to save Mother Earth. She is fine, she will adapt. But she is here to teach us to save us. The sunlight feeds the roots, the internal process. The internal process is fed by the fruit, revealing new aspects of yourself. The human condition, the gifts of the human, our challenges and opportunities, gives rise to the human longing, leads us on the path of the human journey. Relation, integration, journey, full circle. Inferring from that, your own conditioning, the self-knowledge, and your own journey. So what is your goal? The promise and the way. The goal is understanding how life works. The promise is making your own life work. Happiness, ease, and aliveness. The way is applying the science of how life works by exercising following your heart. So how do we bridge our internal duality? How do we integrate into alignment with life? Realizing that we are the body. Then later realizing that we are beyond the body. Shifting our identity. Realizing that we are nature. Seeing conditioning only as conditioning. We all are conditioned. This is not some physical faulty, but a reaction chain like. Emotions are only a wave of energy. Thoughts are only energy movement. Making the experience that there is a space where these things arise. What are the teachings of life that can be applied to the personal life? What are new mindsets of life, a new perspective towards life so that life works out? Why doesn't life work out? Happiness. Happiness can be delineated as the following. There is the emotion of joy that is found in the manifest. This can be either something material, like a roller coaster ride, a sensual experience, a movie, a psychoactive substance, a nice dinner, or just a remembrance of his past experience. And there is the state of contentment with what is. In finding the fullness of this particular moment without any impulse to leave, alter, or amplify the experience can be called fulfillment. The emotion of joy can be most enjoyed only when the state of contentment is known as experienced. Then we don't depend on the emotion of joy anymore as the only source of happiness. In dependence on the emotion of joy, we on the other hand feel the fear of the absence of it. But in regularly experiencing the state of contentment, the emotion of joy is not clung to because it is not seen as the only source of happiness. The emotion of happiness requires access to the thing that we associate the joy with. The state of contentment is not dependent on the existence of anything, but on the absence of something. The access is not available all the time, so the dependence of emotion, but on the absence of something. Not available all the time, so being dependent on the emotion of joy gives rise to fear, insecurity, and the urge to control the source of happiness. So the absence of something is potentially available all the time. Man, this is like getting a problem. When knows, yo. Contentment is found on the internal. Joy is triggered within by the external. In mastering the art of living, that is the relation to the internal and the external, happiness is found. Contentment is found through spiritual realization due to trauma work. Joy is found in getting in touch with our emotions. The more we are able to distinguish subtleties of feelings, the more of a rich experience of each moment we have. Richness comprises of depth and variety, horizontality and verticality. We experience the depth of life when we experience the depth of our own nature. When we are willing to experience the deeply unpleasant feelings, we grow the capacity to experience deeply pleasant feelings. We experience the variety of life, where we experience the distinct variety of nuances of feelings within us. Video 11. The seminar is not focused on happiness, because with a goal to achieve happiness, real happiness is not achieved. All right. Further forward we go. There is a trade-off between happiness and the survival of the society. For the society to survive, we need to compensate that time, our personal fulfillment. Compensate is a great word that goes into our vocabulary. We need to compensate at times our personal fulfillment interfering with it acting from a place of our egoic entity. We don't follow our hearts but our heads. This trade-off needs to be balanced so that fulfillment and societal stability remain. Happiness is already there. It doesn't need to be trained or brought about to be there. Joy, however, can be trained through techniques such as NLP. The question is just, do we feel it? Or is our focus pulled towards something that has more survival value right now?